welcome to my very good friend, Ms. Kari Switala.
June 2nd, 2018 was a day that changed my life. You see, it was a cold, rainy day, and we were up at our cabin in northern Minnesota, and we've got two boys, they're 13 and 14. We were kind of sitting around going, you know, we could just sit here and say, all right, the weather sucks, but what do you do? Or we could get out and do something fun and enjoy and embrace nature. And that's what we did. So we loaded up our four-wheelers. We have two side-by-sides, which are, if you don't know, they're basically two-person four-wheelers. And we went up to my husband's family's cabin. And while we were up there, we went with his cousins and we said, all right, let's go and check out the trails up here. Now, it was something that was new to us. We hadn't been on those trails before, and so we let them lead. So as we were going, it was my husband's cousins in front of us, then myself and my husband, and then our two boys behind us. Now, what I didn't know what was going to happen next. So just a few minutes into our ride, we were on a shared road, and we were coming around the corner. And as we came around the corner, all of a sudden, we were blinded by these two headlights, which obviously weren't supposed to be there. And as those headlights approached, instantly, we had not even a second to react. The first ATV slid off to the side to avoid being hit by this truck. The second ATV, which was us, narrowly avoided them and hit the ditch. The third was not so lucky. So every parent's worst nightmare was hearing the sound of metal crunching metal and knowing your kids were behind you. It truly was one of the worst days of my life. So these are the two boys here. As we were there, we instantly ran back to the ATV, and my youngest son, Sam, who was 13, he was actually perfectly fine. He had a couple bumps, scrapes, bruises, but my other son, Max, was not okay. He was pinned inside the ATV by his leg. He was screaming, there was blood, there was smoke. It was horrible, right? Every parent's worst nightmare. The next 15, 20 minutes, I was very thankful that adrenaline kicks in when you're in those situations and your emotions kind of go to the side, right? So we began kind of triaging the situation. We're in northern Minnesota. Someone was trying to get signal to call the ambulance. We couldn't reach him at first. So I was tying tourniquets on his leg. My husband and his cousins were tying the vehicles together to try to winch the vehicles apart. We finally get Max out, we get him onto the road, and then we waited for 15 more minutes until the ambulance came. I didn't know it was possible to say that many prayers in that short amount of time, but we did. Now the end result was the ambulance did finally come, which was that big sigh of relief, right? They ended up taking Max from one ambulance to another ambulance, and then to the airport in Grand Rapids, where then they flew him to Duluth, where he underwent 3 surgeries in 5 days. So he had obviously, as you can see, a broken right leg, was severely shattered, lost an artery. The list goes on and on. But as I sat in that hospital room that night, I thought about how different this day could have been, right? This was a bad day. It was a really bad day, but it could have been the worst day. And at that moment, I'm sitting there, I still had the dirty jeans on that I was wearing from the accident. I still actually had wet hair because it had been raining so bad. And I sat there and I'm looking at him all in cast with machines hooked up to him all over the place. And I kept thinking, wow, this is what you think about when you think how precious life is, right? And why do we wait until we have an instance or a traumatic situation to finally kind of wake us up out of that slumber? And so as I looked at him, I thought, you know what? Max got a second chance. But not only did he get a second chance, we all got a second chance. And it was at that point in time, I had been talking about writing a book, I had been talking about doing all these things, but I was just too busy. Anyone else feel like you've been too busy? That's like a word I'm trying to strike from my vocabulary when someone's like, how are you doing? I'm busy. We're busy going through the motions, not taking action and really serving what our true purpose is here. And that is my goal today is to share with you some lessons that I learned as I watched him go through that recovery process. And I think that those lessons are very applicable to you as business owners, as business professionals, but also as people. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. So the first lesson, or the first trait I want to talk about, is resilience. Now, resilience, as you can see, is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. Now, here's a 14-year-old boy who has just found out that basically, so this happened June 2nd, he wasn't even able to finish school, which actually was probably not a bad thing from his perspective, right? He's like, sweet, no school, but I'm in a wheelchair. He was gonna spend the rest of the summer in his wheelchair. And oh, guess, by the way, he was not able to go home because our home wasn't wheelchair friendly. So he had to live up at the cabin with his dad all summer, which I know many of you would say was like, sounds like a pretty good deal, right? But for a 14-year-old boy, he wants to be with his friends. He wants to be doing things. So at that point in time, this kid could have just been like, this sucks. Summer's over. You know, I'm just gonna crawl up in bed and just be done. But he didn't. He was resilient. He found ways to get down to the dock. Now, he was supervised in this picture, but my husband was close by. He was able to go down and fish off the dock because he was resilient. Now, when I think about resilience, how many of you learned to ride a bike? Come on, you all learned to ride a bike, right? So inherently, you're all resilient already. But guess what happens? As we get older, we start to get a little bit more fearful of falling off the bike, right? We get fearful of losing a client. But when we're learning to ride a bike, you fall off, you get right back on again with no hesitation. Even if you've skinned your knees, you maybe cry for a second and you're right back on it again. So think about like when you lose a client, if you lose an employee, maybe you don't get the next big promotion, you could choose to just curl up, or you could be resilient. You could get back on that bike again. And one of the things that I found that's really helped to kind of keep that resiliency is to have a really big goal, something that excites you. Not that like when you're writing your goals, like, oh, I hope I gain, 5% over last year's goals. Like, boring, right? There's no excitement in that. What about like, I wanna make $100,000 more so that I can go take a family trip or a family safari to Africa. Like that's something, well, at least that's something that excites me, right? But to you, it might be buying a huge boat or doing something big. But you have to have a goal that excites you, that creates kind of that fire in your belly that makes you, when you fall off that bike, you're like, I don't care, I'm getting back up again because I'm going for it. And so that's your first key lesson, is to be resilient and to have a goal that truly excites you. The second key attribute that you need is determination. Now, Max was told, and unfortunately, he did have a really good experience with the hospitals in Duluth and with the care that he received. But he was told, like, hey, buddy, your summer's over. Like, I can't say how many times I kept saying, your summer's over. I'm like, his summer hasn't started. Like, and let's think positively, right? Like, we got to get him through this. And they also told him, you know what? It's highly likely that you might not be fully recovered for at least 18 months. That's the last thing you want to tell a 14-year-old boy, right? I'm pretty sure he didn't hear a word they said because he already had a plan in mind. He didn't care what they said, what the diagnosis was. He was going to make it happen. He was determined. And as you see here, the definition of determination is firmness of purpose and resoluteness. So he could have just said, all right, you're right, that's what it is. But he chose to push himself. And this is a picture of him in the hospital. It took actually 4 of us to try to get him to get up because he had a broken hand as well, versus back in November when he was learning to walk again. So has anyone ever said, you know what, I'm gonna start on Monday. I'm gonna start that diet on Monday. Or I'm just gonna cheat today, and on Monday I'm going to start my exercise plan. Anyone? I see all your smirks, so I know it's true. What if we treated every day as Monday? It's so easy to just kind of push it off, right? But if we have that determination, if we stay focused on what we're trying to do and we say, hey, today, like, even if you had a bad day, the next day is Monday. It's Monday all over again. So we take away that excuse. Also, striking busy from your vocabulary, as I mentioned before. And one of the things I found to be really helpful is to write your goal, your number one goal, the goal that excites you, that puts fire in your belly, at the top of every to-do list that you have. It's that constant reminder that it's there. That's what you're going for. So do you want to cheat today, or do you want to treat it as a Monday? So determination is very, very key. Has anyone read the book, The One Thing, before? A couple people? I highly recommend it if you haven't read it before. This is the key lesson number 2, is to start every day with one thing that will help you move closer towards your goal. I don't know about you, but I have to-do lists that are pages and pages long. And oftentimes what happens, especially if I'm maybe not super excited about the day or, like kind of dragging, I'm going, okay, what are the things that I can check off that are the easiest things to do, right? And the things that remain on there, those big rocks that I'm like, oh, this will definitely help me get closer to my goal, but it's going to take me so much time. And I just want to get something done. I want to feel accomplished and check it off. Well, if you go back, and if you actually read this, there's science behind it too, about the one thing, that if you go back and you start your day with the one thing that's going to help you move closer towards your goal, you will accomplish more and you will reach your goal. So that is your lesson number 2, is to start your day with the one thing that will help you get further along. The last is attitude. So attitude is defined as a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something. Now, this is a picture of Max, who, this is our cabin, and as you can see, it was also not wheelchair friendly. This will probably terrify some of you in the room, but the very first couple of times we had to transport him, he's about 140 pounds and about 6 feet tall. He would be in the wheelchair, and my husband would bump him down the stairs while I was underneath. That might have been strategically placed. While I was underneath, in case, I don't know if he fell, that I would maybe break his fall. I don't know. But we knew we needed a better situation, right? So one of the things that, once again, going back to where Max was at, he could have just kind of said, this stinks, I'm going to just sit in my room and play video games. But he helped. He helped build what we call kind of like our ark now, and now we love it. We leave it there. But they built him a walkway so that we could easily get him out of the house and down onto the dock, so he could go fishing, he could go boating, he could do things that normal boys would be doing during the summer. So attitude is everything. And as you can imagine, your attitude impacts everything as well. Anyone have any negative self-talk? We all do, right? Things that pop up over and over again. And that can kind of defeat us and kind of keep us away from our goals. I don't know if you know, but this is Michael Jordan here. He's apparently a pretty good basketball player. He had, let me tell you the numbers, he missed 9,000 shots, he lost 300 games, and he missed 26 game-winning shots. Yet he attributes those losses to his success because he learned from those mistakes every single time. And he picked himself back up every single time and said, all right, I'm going to try again. He had a positive attitude. And so one of the things I found to be really helpful is, anyone used affirmations? Affirmations are hugely helpful. In fact, there's a ton of different apps out there that will send you an affirmation every day, and then will send you a reminder a couple times during the day to recite it. But keeping those affirmations top of mind is also something really helpful as well. So the last key lesson I learned through this whole process was to start and end every day with gratitude. Because gratitude turns what we have into enough. Now you're probably thinking, wow, this is great. This is cool story. I mean, not cool story, but interesting story and some great information, but how does this all tie together? Well, so we're coming up on a year since Max's accident. And I have to tell you, if I could look back, or if, looking back from that point in time, I would be shocked at all that has happened and all that I have been blessed with in my life since then. I told you my goal was to write a book. Not only did I write that book, so I had started to write it prior to the accident. I wrote 95% of it from the day after his accident until November, when it went in to be published. It was launched in February. Our business was named Business of the Year for Dakota County and Scott County. We far surpassed our goals where we had been way, way low on our sales. As you can imagine, with one parent being, basically not working much and the other trying to make up for it. Everything has changed in our world. And every day I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. And yet I think, okay, I know why it happened. Because every day, this is what I do. This is my routine. And I haven't faltered from it, or I haven't gone to a Monday yet. So exercise. It is, if you look up statistics about exercise, whether you're doing it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, if you are a business owner, business professional, you've got goals that you want to accomplish, and I'm not an exercise professional, okay? If you are trying to accomplish these goals, exercise is going to help you get there. You need it. Meditation and visualization. I have a goal board. I look at it every single morning. I meditate. I'm only at 6 minutes because I have a hard time sitting still, but I'm working on it. And I started at about like 3-4 minutes because it's hard to keep your thoughts, to not think. So even if you're just doing a couple minutes a day. And then I journal. I start with what's my number one goal? What's the one thing that's going to help me, the one thing I can do today to help me get there? Affirmation and gratitude. So I would challenge you. I hope that you found this to be inspirational, that if maybe you've got some big goals that you want to crush this year, that you start to think about how can you take a routine, and maybe it's not just this routine, maybe you've got your own routine, but how can you put that into place so that you can come back to me next year and say, hey, you know what? I saw you speak last year, and guess what? Guess what's happened since then? I've crushed this goal, and this goal. Because nothing would make me happier than that. And with that, I want to leave you with a quote, and this is actually from Michael Jordan as well. Some want it to happen. Some wish it would happen. Others make it happen. Thank you.